I'm Eric Loy, and welcome to Eric Loy Interviews. On this podcast, we talk with folks from the VTuber community on their channels, their talents, their stories, where they come from, and their plans for the future. Fresh from the racetrack, we've got Muppet on the line. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. How did the race go?
Well, it just came from as I told you, just came from running double stint. I think the best stints of my fucking life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got into the car with us in fourth place. Ended my first field run still in fourth somehow. And then when everyone swapped over to their other drivers, yeah, ended up finishing my second run with us in the lead, or pitting from the lead.
Wow. So I'm kind of throwing everybody in here. First of all, could you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody here real quick?
Hey, so I am Muppet, aka Dogbox Zone Roxanne Morgan, aka Roxy, Speed Queen. The title, the amount of titles, nicknames, and whatnot that I have is about a mile-long list. But yeah, I am a cybergoth-ish, trans-femme-ish VTuber, 18 plus VTuber, should note.
Yeah.
And yeah, I try to play a variety of stuff, good variety of stuff. Try to keep Cyberpunk 2077 around is something that I regularly play, and iRacing is something that's going to be around forever.
Yeah.
And then yeah, other than that, I either go for, racing sims or kind of more like story-based single-player games.
And,
this bread and butter.
All right, so what we're getting you kind of around an event that's going on right now here on a Saturday afternoon. What event are you currently in and just got off the track from?
Yeah, so it was the iRacing 6 Hours of the Glen. So a 6-hour long team endurance event based off the real life version of it actually took place this past weekend at the Watkins Glen road course in upstate New York with the real life IMSA field running. And yeah, I mean, iRacing has a bunch of that stuff. Like they have the official license for, they have the official licenses for NASCAR. They have the official licenses for IndyCar as well. Lost it for a bit, but they have that back.
Yeah.
They also have the license for IMSA, Super Formula, Australian V8 supercars.
Wow.
World of Outlaws, dirt racing. Like they have a bunch of these different racing organizers. And the licensing to have like the tracks and the cars and everything in the sim and run, sim based events based off these real events. Like there are some huge ones like just recently was the Nürburgring 24 hours. They have the Daytona 24-hour race at the Daytona International Speedway every January.
Yeah.
Daytona 500 as well. I actually ran 2 attempts at that, which was a lot of laps.
Yes, it is. It's like 250 laps, isn't there? Something like that, or 300?
So it's 200 laps.
Okay, it's 2.5 miles. Okay. Yeah. It's a folks who grew up as old as I am on racing games didn't have your 250 lap spectaculars like that. We went like 10 laps and we were tired from the joysticks.
Unless you were one of the NASCAR Thunder 2003 nut jobs. Which fun fact. iRacing started off with like a team of developers that had formerly worked for that team.
Mm-hmm.
The team that worked on NASCAR Thunder 2003. So a lot of that, like a lot of the code in iRacing is built real was and still is built really similar to NASCAR 2000 Thunder 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Which fun fact, NASCAR Thunder is now shareware. Technically, you can download it free online. You can with it run a bunch of different mods. They
Yeah.
have an online serve, online as an option and everything.
Yeah.
It is still alive and well, even if it's in its own little niche.
It's got its own little racing world.
Oh yeah.
I
Well, I mean the original Assetto Corsa is still going.
yeah. Yeah, it's. I think that this is a very something that's going to be very viable for a long, long, long time. This type of competition, and I
And
don't see why
it's only
not.
getting more viable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only getting more and more viable because they're able to get it like more and more fully accurate.
Hmm.
Like basically majority of teams for their like race teams and whatnot for their simulator setup that they put their drivers through and they use nowadays the process is if you're developing like an update or updated parts on a car or trying to figure out a setup or whatnot for a track,
Hmm.
uh all these teams have their own bespoke really in-depth version of like patched over and modified version of Assetto Corsa that they run more
Hmm.
often than not.
Yeah.
And then they have these insane setups that they run. But you also get a bunch of like the like folks that their living is driving the real deal for a living,
Hmm.
going over and starting to do like iRacing or sim racing as practice. Like,
Oh yeah.
you have Max Verstappen is a huge one.
Hmm.
Setting aside personal opinions on him as a driver, we can get to that at some point. He he does a ton with iRacing. Dale Earnhardt Jr. actually is on iRacing's board of on like iRacing's like one of the iRacing's like part of their ownership group and
Right.
like on the board and everything,
Yeah.
and is kind of the one in charge with iRacing got the rights to make a console game for NASCAR, NASCAR 25, which
Mm.
is not their first venture into console racing sims
Mm.
or console racing.
Yeah.
They have done that before with the World of Outlaws titles.
Right. Yeah. It's something. It seems when someone who's outside of it looks at it like, oh yeah, you made a racing game. No, this is not just a racing game.
Yeah,
You created an entire sporting genre here, and
pretty much. Yeah.
it's really neat to see it and talk about it and watch people perform in it. Uh, if you had your choice of which type of car that you would be able to just race in, the only one type, which one would it be?
Honestly, I think I'm finding my home in the GT kind of style of car,
Mm-hmm.
GT3s, GT4s.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like what I'm really gravitating towards.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, which luckily, there are folks now, more and more folks nowadays who are actually, if they get insanely good at iRacing, they go through go into the esports side of things. They do really well with the esports side of things.
Mm-hmm.
These esports teams are partnering with real race teams, and eventually, or at some point, or if even you just impress enough people, you can get a shot at like getting your foot in the door with sponsorship
Mm.
into racing for rail.
Oh, I don't see why
Like
not.
you,
I mean,
yeah.
that,
I
that makes
mean,
that makes sense to me. It because it certainly it goes hand in hand, doesn't it? I mean, it's still a
yeah,
competitive. In fact, you could argue in some cases that this is really more what auto racing used to be about because in what they originally called the stock cars, the whole point was they were all racing the same type of car.
yeah.
And it was how it was the skill was how well did you drive this car, instead of let's figure out the 1 millimeter of metal we can take off to make the car go that much faster. It was the
Well, yeah, well, okay. Few kind of corrections there.
mm,
So there's still plenty of that. There's
mm,
still plenty of like it's called spec series racing, and that's
right,
like your Indy cars, your NASCARs.
yeah,
There's like technically nowadays three different styles of racing. For like racing like parity in between the different like cars and whatnot.
mm,
But yeah, like NASCAR, IndyCar, those are spec series where yeah, like all the different NASCAR manufacturers, the car bodies will
mm,
look different
mm,
manufacturer to manufacturer.
mm,
They're made in such a specific way that it's basically like three identical cars, like and of course like the chassis
mm,
is all the same. The engines all have to be built basically identically. It's just which manufacturer you go through and
right,
whatnot.
right,
Uh,
yeah,
and then you get into like IndyCar. The only thing that teams are allowed to actually build their own of and mess with is their dampers and they're like suspension damping and like or like differentials or something. I forgot. And
yeah,
then what's called a weight jacker for oval racing,
yeah.
which I can explain the wizardry behind it. All I know is that it adjusts the weight distribution on the car to make it more planted in corners.
Mm, yeah. You need to have that center of balance move a little bit, otherwise you'll pray for a Tokyo drift around every corner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you'll see it. You've seen it like, especially in the fourth generation of NASCAR, I believe they nickname it the Twisted Sister,
Yeah.
and you'll see it with basically everything leading up to the current seventh generation of NASCAR Cup Series car, where the cars are all built kind of like skewed a bit,
Hmm.
basically built with the express purpose of turning left at a high rate of speed.
Right.
And then of course you go into you know, asphalt racing modified cars and those things look funky as hell. Everything's like offset.
Yeah.
Everything's like offset and whatnot. The left side, like that left side wheels and tires go way further off the engine than the right side does and
Right.
whatnot. But it's, all they're really doing on those oval tracks is making the left turns. So they're building the cars to take those left turns.
Right. Being as efficient as possible on those turns. But and that's why with the NASCAR races, once they get to the in NASCAR and the Indy cars, when they get to road courses, especially Indy, that's why you see different people winning.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
you,
Well,
give,
that,
give
and
you specialists.
it's also like kind of, yeah. I mean, you'll see with like, Shane Van Gisbergen currently in the Cup Series. He was brought in from driving V8 supercars, which currently those compared to the current generation is really close.
Mm-hmm.
It's like really similar characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Trackhouse brought him in specifically to win road course races.
Mm, yeah, yeah, because it's such a different animal. Um,
Yeah, I mean
and
it's two entirely different styles of driving.
yeah,
I will say road course racing, like road course racing has a lot more room for error built
mm,
within it because it's not just four corners
right,
in every lap,
yeah,
and you have to keep your momentum up as much as possible, and even the slightest mistake, you can drop a position or two.
yeah, or more.
With road courses or more, yeah.
Mm,
Whereas with road racing, even if you make a mistake, there are still ways to defend. There's still ways to recover, and there are ways to do so without losing, losing positions.
yeah. When I watch, get a chance to watch like a Formula One race, um, it's so. I look at it and it's so precise how you have to drive in it.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
there's like maybe two places where you can safely pass anybody, and the
Yeah.
and the corners are sharp, and you have to slow way down, and there's a lot more variable in it than a straight up oval track. Um, I find it a little tough to watch, but it's because you have to wait and wait and wait and wait for something to happen. But for those folks who are kind of raised with NASCAR, um, it's tough to find anybody who covers both of those types of races and really enjoys both of them at the same rate.
I mean, yeah, I'm kind of an oddball out there because, like, I love watching NASCAR. I think honestly, a huge part of that is I kind of have found like, my group
Yeah.
to where we literally, get in a Discord call together and we will sit in Discord together. Someone streams
Hmm.
the race through totally legal consumption methods.
Of course, all above board.
uh, and then we sit there and we watch the race together.
Hmm.
And generally it's one of my favorite parts it's one of my favorite parts of the week. It's
Yeah.
generally one of my favorite parts of the week.
Yeah.
Because we're just hanging out there, we're just watching it. But
Yeah.
the problem is it's hard to get people into NASCAR, especially since like the Cars franchise came out and everyone thinks, oh, it's like, always down to the wire and always gonna be a real close, beating and
Yeah.
banging,
Right.
win by a nose type race.
Yeah. 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 And it's not always that. Sometimes it's a blowout. Sometimes it's.
Sometimes it looks like a blowout. Sometimes it's a fuel mileage race
Mm,
where, depending on when you pit and how hard you're going and how far you're pushing the car,
hmm.
you get in a situation where, you know, it's down to how much fuel each car has and how much fuel they can save and who's going to make it to the end.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I've
And
seen people finish without
yeah,
fuel. Eh,
yeah.
it just.
And I mean, it's hard to make those races. It's okay. I'm not going to say it's hard to make them interesting, but it's a lot harder to make the call and the broadcast for those races interesting.
Hmm.
What I will say, the team that got put together for the broadcast on Prime Video
Hmm.
absolutely nailed it because
Right.
they got Dale Earnhardt Jr., they got a bunch of folks who know what they're talking about,
Right.
and between that and the Amazon like stats and display of everything, they were able to show in real time that fuel mileage racing and how that works and that head to head and made it interesting.
Yeah.
So I honestly really hope that Fox, who broadcasts majority of the races and honestly sucks at it, they've been ruining the IndyCar broadcast this entire season. I
Yeah.
really hope Fox takes some notes,
Mm,
and if they don't, then I hope NASCAR cuts Fox out of broadcasting a hell of a lot more
yeah.
and gives more to either Prime or because that's also the team that NBC it also has for their broadcasts.
Yeah. And when.
But those kinds of races can be super interesting too because it's kind of like you kind of like get can if it's done right you can get explained and you get it explained like you can see kind of like how it's shaping out and how it can still come down to the wire
Yeah.
even if the cars are like quarter half a lap apart
Yeah.
for position.
Yeah. And folks always realize too that in some of these races that quarter of a mile is not even a second. And he's like
Yeah,
boom, boom.
yeah,
And so they're moving
well,
that fast. When I grew up,
yeah,
when I grew
like
up in the '70s, it was we got one race a week maybe on television, and that's with ABC if they were there. And the Indy 500 was tape delayed on television. Um, you could
yeah,
listen to it on the radio. Uh, that was that was basically our racing. We got to see a lot of AJ Foyt
oh yeah,
in
that
every
AJ Foyt.
in every race.
That's
Yeah.
do you remember the Cart USAC split as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That
That was
that was fun. That was
yeah.
genuinely fun.
Yeah. Oh, it was nuts. I actually got to interview Tony Stewart before he became Tony Stewart. He came through for a
Big
race in
Smoke got to
Springfield,
interview
Illinois.
Smoke himself.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
it was funny because he was one of the things.
Tony.
One of the things we asked him was, well, which do you want to do? What type of racing you want to do? He goes, all of it.
Okay, you want to know my honest opinion? Tony Stewart might be one of the best all-around racing drivers of all time
Hmm.
because, he started off running in, dirt sprint car, in
Yep.
like sprint cars,
Yep.
dirt oval racing.
Yep. Silver Crown
Dominant,
stuff.
won a bunch of championships in that. Went over to IndyCar, ran really freaking well, run races there.
Hmm.
Went over to NASCAR, which is an entirely different type of car,
Hmm.
but even though it's still ovals, won a bunch of races with that.
Yep.
And then went and got himself a NHRA team and started running an NHRA. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I forget if he won an entire like NHRA weekend or if he won the whole championship this past season.
Oh yeah. It's a he was the guy who went from the Indy 500 to the Coca-Cola 600 and finished in the top 10 in both races in one day,
Yep.
which is
Yeah.
nuts. He
Yeah.
drove.
And yeah. And like, legitimately, it's the closest anyone's gotten since Mario Andretti doing the double.
Yeah.
And Larson, Larson would have had a shot at it last year, 2024, if the Indy 500 didn't get rain delayed,
Hmm.
and then the Coke 600 didn't get rain shortened.
Yeah.
Because he got there right as they threw the red flag
Yeah.
for weather,
Yeah.
and it got to the point where there was no way they were going to get the track dried until like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's something with the races. It's got to be. You can't have the water on the track because it's such the tires, everything is just calibrated to such a point that anything can throw it off and makes it imminently dangerous. You're basically just riding a rocket without steering at that point. It's and they really have to make it as optimal as possible with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and are we going to see, you think, in racing more of that? Um, More people who are less specialized, more people who will go in different
Honestly,
cars.
honestly, I don't know. It can go either way
Mm,
because again, with sim racing being a thing and these sims getting about as one to one as you can get
mm,
with being able to drive and learn how to drive all these different cars,
yeah,
it's like it opens the door for that being a lot easier for more drivers to achieve. But on the flip side, it's not the same. It's definitely not the same animal to be a professional racing driver as it was like, back in the 70s,
oh well,
80s
yeah,
even. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if you remember Dick Trickle, who would
yeah,
chain smoke cigarettes
yep,
throughout all of his races.
yes,
Mark Martin looks like a lunatic for being,
yeah,
drug-free, alcohol-free, working out a bunch, being in really good freaking shape.
yes,
Nowadays, that's the standard.
yeah,
That's the standard for these drivers. They have rigorous workout routines.
yeah,
They don't smoke. They drink sparingly. And like, especially when you get into like, the more like, like open wheel stuff and
right,
more stuff that isn't like NASCAR where the cars weigh a lot,
right,
is like an F1. The drivers have to watch and manage their weight and like diet and restrict calorie intake and whatnot.
yeah,
Honestly, in a even more precise and worse or like more specific hyper specific way than like ballet dancers and gymnasts,
yeah, yeah,
because that extra like you know a few ounces worth of body weight shaved off can shave off like a tenth of a second a lap
oh yeah,
up
absolutely,
or a few hundredths a lap,
yeah,
and that can be the difference between winning a race and coming in second.
yeah. And I
you
can't
know
I can't imagine AJ Foyt going on a diet to
oh no.
I mean, you're talking about guys back then who would I know AJ Foyt one time busted up his leg and got it all screwed back together and then raced with that leg all screwed together.
Yeah.
And the guy was like,
Yeah.
"No, you wouldn't do that now."
No, you wouldn't do that now, both because of safety regulation, safety and health regulations
Yeah,
built into the sport,
yeah,
and also because just genuinely the force of all of that, the forces that the cars like exert on your body now are insane.
yeah,
Because like like in order to run the Indy 500, the drivers are subjecting themselves to for like 3.5 hours on end. The G forces greater than fighter pilots
Yep.
at like their peak, at
Oh,
like their peaks
yeah. Yeah. And those pilots don't have 32 other pilots within. Uh,
within like inches
yeah.
of them. And
Yeah.
one wrong move, and you're going for a real nasty crash.
Yeah. And
And
taking a lot of
yeah,
people with
safety
you.
technology has evolved a real long way, but like, there have been two folks in the last like 7 years that have lost their life in open wheel racing at Spa.
Uh-huh.
There's been, you know, James Hinchcliffe, who ended up getting impaled by like a roll bar or cross suspension cross member or something during his IndyCar wreck
Yeah.
that basically led to the end of his career
Yeah.
as a driver.
Yeah. And there's some wrecks you see that look terrible that they just get out and walk away from, and others that don't look so bad that are really bad. Um, I mean, you look at the the Dale Earnhardt one, obviously, and while obviously it killed him, but it certainly doesn't look as bad as some I've seen. If you just looked at it without knowing what happened, um,
Yeah, like if you've seen any of Ryan Preece's wrecks at Daytona,
yeah,
you would have thought that would have killed someone. But I mean, the thing with, Dale Sr.'s wreck is that the reason that he died was a basal skull fracture
mhm,
because he wasn't wearing a Hans device, head and neck, a head and neck, I don't know, suspension
right,
saving. I forget what the S stands for,
yeah,
but it's a device that basically restricts your head movement
mhm,
to a point where you are not going to suffer that kind of, neck, spinal, or skull fracture anymore.
right,
And then you have like these seats that hold you in such a specific way that you don't move an inch.
mhm,
And you have crash structures encasing the driver to the
yep,
point where, you know,
yeah.
certain things just,
It breaks away from the car, and you in some
yeah.
instances, and rolls you that way. I mean, you still don't want to be trapped in a fire or anything while it's going on, but it's an amazing.
Although now they have onboard fire suppression systems
Yeah.
and they have stations around the track, fires, fire crews,
Mm,
medical crews, safety crews
yeah.
that a driver has to wait basically no less than a minute before they are receiving, rescue and care.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And because especially in instances like that, if there is something life-threatening going on, every second counts.
Yeah.
I mean, you have in F1 the Halo system that can take a tire full for a full like wheel and tire setup full force at like 200 miles an hour, 200 plus miles an hour, and it doesn't even budge. The tire just bounces, whatever debris, whatever, just bounces right off.
Yeah.
IndyCar, the reason why, but then of course, you have IndyCar who waited even longer because they wanted something specific with their driver, protection system
Right.
more than the Halo, where they wanted something to block smaller pieces of debris because, within Weldon, it was a piece of debris that would have gone through the gaps in Halo.
Mm,
So they developed the Aero Screen, which is a Halo with like a Lexan, which is, the Halo with the Lexan on it. The
mhm.
Lexan will be able to, withstand bits of debris and protect the driver from those.
Right. Right. It's amazing that the stuff that the differences between 50 years ago and now, as far as that goes. Um, and
Oh yeah.
and
I mean, it used to be with like, in like the 50s and 60s with like in like the 40s, 50s, 60s with like, with racing drivers especially in open wheel and open cockpit racing, where they would actually drive without seatbelts on at all because they had more of a chance of survival if they were ejected from the vehicle
yeah.
than if they were trapped inside while it burst into a massive ball of flame and
Mhm.
they were cooked inside.
Yeah. And as light as some of those cars are, you see what happens if wind gets under it. and
Oh,
you
exactly.
just get lifted up and start flying, and you really have no control at that point.
Yep.
But to be able to take that and put that on into a usable game and simulation, because it's more than a game, it's a simulation at this point,
Yeah.
of racing, and do that in a way that is competitive and being able to be used by other folks all over the world, is pretty amazing in itself.
Yeah.
To get that experience, you have to get the people who actually go through the actual experience, and and
Yeah.
yeah, you can't do it from the outside.
But yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to get that. You also have to get like you also have to get like like physicists and like folks that know the how all the calculations behind all of those different forces
Mm-hmm.
and physics principles work to develop the code that programs that into the game. And then you have to have the driver, the act folks that know how it feels for real,
Mm-hmm.
test it out and run it and see if it's close enough. And it's like a very involved process. Like iRacing is constantly working on stuff. They're constantly updating things, constantly figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
But iRacing, it's the team at iRacing itself are very particular in when they deem something ready to be released. Like for example, they spent about half a decade working on getting the rain entire like wet weather and rain system in the game to work properly, like to
Yeah,
get accurate weather, and they're still working on it with
yeah,
like getting accurate weather patterns and whatnot,
yeah,
uh accurate behavior from the cars
mm-hmm.
and the wet weather tires and those conditions. And it's
Yeah,
not like every car in the game has the ability to has those wet weather tires and the ability to race in the wet.
right, right.
They're keep adding more and more, but it's another super complicated thing
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many like minute little things
Yeah,
about it that you can't just, figure out like the scientific calculation side of it
mm-hmm.
and then just plug that in and you're done.
Yeah. Well, it was the ability to do this online what brought you to VTubing, or were you VTubing before this happened?
Oh, I was VTubing well before this happened.
Yeah.
Honestly, so I didn't get into iRacing until 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I I've always been into like racing and motorsports. Like I one of my like my main one of my main like dream, you know, like one of my dream like careers, the career that I wanted to have in life was to be a racing driver because
Mm.
when I was 8 years old on a snow day, turned on like in the 2000s, turned on an ALMS race rerun
Yeah.
and saw that and I was like, I want to do that. And like, turned on like one of those or turned on like it was either that or it was like a NASCAR race at Watkins Glen
Yeah. Yeah.
rerun that I turned on. I
Yeah.
forget which,
Did
but
you find the
between
Speed
like
channel?
that, the speed, yes, this yeah, I was a frequent visitor of the Speed channel. I was
Yep.
a frequent visitor of NBC Sports,
Yep.
Fox Sports, all the different places where I knew they showed racing. And I never got like a consistent, I was never like one of those had it marked on the calendar, set aside time, watched all the races live
Yeah.
because, I was usually busy whenever all those happened.
Yeah.
So I just took whatever racing I could get
Yeah.
watching
Yeah.
on TV. And I also took like whatever I could get in terms of like racing games because, growing up, my family weren't too fond of video games and that
Mm.
kind of stuff.
Really?
Very like, yeah, they weren't super fond of that, but they
Mm.
still kind of, like let me, but they were also understood that if they were like, no, you're not allowed to have this in the house, not allowed to do this, not allowed to do that, I would just, I would find ways around it.
Right.
They, like, I have my own, issues and whatnot to get in that honestly I will refrain from doing so just because it is probably too heavy for anyone to really want to watch per
Yeah.
se.
Yeah.
So
But you got through it.
but or listened to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got through it,
Yeah.
but they did realize that whatever they didn't like about me, that I was smart enough that going just like blanket ban on something or blanket not allowed this, not allowed that, I would find ways around it
Right. Right.
for the most part.
You know,
So,
it's better to
you know,
work together on something than just
yeah.
yeah, because everybody
Or
buys in
like,
at that point.
yeah. Or be like, so like I could have, video games, but playtime was very restricted,
Hmm.
or there are certain games I could get, certain games I couldn't. Certain
Yeah.
games I could get and play, certain games I couldn't. The racing games were ones that they didn't really see much of a problem with it. So I played a lot of Need for Speed, a lot of Grid, a lot of Mario Kart. Mario
Mm.
Kart Wii. So Mario Kart DS and the Nintendo DS were my first game, my first console. So
Yeah.
I crap ton of hours in that.
Yeah.
First, you know, like sit down in the living room type console was the Wii, and Mario Kart Wii was one of the first games we got for that console. So a ton of hours in Mario Kart Wii.
Yeah.
And between all of that, and I got really into the Mario Kart Wii stuff.
Yeah.
And then Mario Kart, when I got a Switch, one of the first games I got with that was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Ended up getting to the point where I actually speedran in that and actually held a world record in one of the categories
Cool.
for that.
Cool.
Granted, I was the first person to submit a time. This is back when like the DLC courses were coming out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were still number one. It
Yeah,
yeah.
for a while, like I held on to it. There were folks that submitted times that were slower than mine,
Yeah.
before I lost my record there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't do Mario Kart anymore though, unfortunately, because it got to a point where like people just didn't want to invite me to play Mario Kart because they ended up realizing that even if I was trying my hardest to dumb down my playstyle and run a, not the most anti-meta, like opposite of meta cart and character setup and
Right.
whatnot, and if
Right.
I was trying to be as stupid as possible with using items,
Yeah.
I would still win basically every race. So I just got stopped. People just didn't want to play with me
J-
anymore. So I'm just like,
just
so I
too
just stopped. I've just stopped playing.
just too
But
good. Just too good. Yeah, it's not a race anymore.
yeah,
It's not fun if we all
honest,
lose.
honestly, oh God, honestly, the funny thing I'm actually remembering is, so I remember when I was like 7, 8 was when I first was like, I want to be a racing driver.
Uh huh.
So I got two funny like life stories with that.
Okay.
So first one, the shorter one, 8th grade in one of like the, like computer tech ed classes, there was one for like, like where the focus was doing like stuff in like Photoshop and whatnot. And for that class, they made us take one of those career aptitude tests,
Oh.
which, going in, I assumed like, okay, I've done like one or two of these before. It's going to be something stupid that I get as a career option. It's as like what it says my best suited career is going to be and whatnot,
Yeah.
It's from like some education company. It's run by, education folk. They're not going to have anything cool in there, but I take the test anyways. Top result for me for career, racing driver. So what I did was you had to Photoshop your face onto a picture of someone in that field.
Yeah.
And sure enough, what I did was I photoshopped my head as one of the drivers for Audi's LMP1 crew.
Yeah. That's
It
pretty
was,
cool. Right. It
yeah, it
basically
was
told you early on
super cool.
what you were. It told you what you already knew.
I mean, legitimately, because like once I got into like proper sim racing with a proper wheel and pedal setup after kind of getting acclimatized
Yeah.
and moving on from the everyone's starter wheel
Mm-hmm.
base, which is one of the Logitech ones,
Mm-hmm.
to what I have now, all of my like wheelbase, my wheel, my pedals are all from a brand called Moza,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the most cost-effective options to go with to get into a proper direct drive wheelbase.
All right. Yeah. You have to have some quality involved, otherwise you're not gonna have a chance.
It's not like cheap, but it's like, get something comparable to this from like Fanatec. I would have been paying like 1.5 to 2 times as much. And if I wanted to go with one of the more bespoke niche sim racing brands, fucking forget it. They'll
Yeah.
sell wheels themselves, not including the wheelbase and the pedals and everything, just the wheel itself for like 1,500, 2,000 plus dollars. There are
Yeah.
even some like licensed one-to-one replicas of real wheels used by in actual race cars that go for like 10, $15,000.
Oh man.
Like there's legitimately a $20,000 replica wheel of the Mercedes AMG team's F1 wheel
Yeah,
that are out there.
that's pretty cool. But if you can afford that, you can probably just afford the car. I mean,
Well, not really, because
eh,
those cars cost about like 40 million bucks a piece.
yeah, that's true. I'm
So
kind of relating it to with $20,000, I could buy maybe 25 cars I could use. I,
that's true. Yeah.
I don't.
Honestly, if you could buy, if you're going for like, stuff off Facebook Marketplace and whatnot, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
But like,
It can be really expensive if you want to.
oh, it can be super expensive.
Yeah.
Like you can make there are folks that will spend six figures on just their sim racing setup
Hmm. And
because you can go nuts with it. You can go something that is realistically a bit more on the basic end, like me. Like I don't have like a full dedicated cockpit. I have just a wheel stand that I hook like a desk chair into a certain thing to keep it from being pushed back when I brake and use the
ah,
pedals.
there you go.
And that's what I'm running now. You can get like full custom built cockpits. You can get a motion rig,
Whoa.
which has like, like little actuators that will like simulate like the pitch and yaw and the roll of the car.
Oh.
Uh on
Yeah.
track.
Oh.
Um,
That might be a little too much
you
for
can
me.
spend, yeah, I mean, you can spend like, 20,000 plus dollars on just your monitor setup to get like triple ultra wide curved monitors. So you can basically fully encase yourself in monitors
Mm,
and basically have the equivalent of VR without needing a headset.
wow. That,
Or you can just spend a few hundred on a used Quest and just connect that.
yeah.
And congrats, you legitimately have one of the better VR sim racing headsets.
Wow.
I think one of the best is technically the HP Reverb. Like the second generation Reverb is
Yeah.
one of the best is like second best for a VR headset to use for sim racing.
Hmm.
The best possible you can use is like the big screen beyond, and that's literally just because it's so compact and light that you can wear it for hours on end and do all your like looking around in the cockpit and head movements and everything, and you're not going to put as much strain on your neck.
Wow. It's so much stuff to talk about this, and uh, just want to ask you before we wrap things up here real quick, and we'll see how you finished in the race there. Your team did. So when did you get started, and why did you get started as a VTuber?
Honestly, so it happened during the pandemic,
Hmm.
and honestly during the pandemic, so first of all, I came up first thing so first I ended up that's when like 2020 was when I first learned what the heck a VTuber even was.
Hmm.
Came across in my Twitch recommended feed, started watching. It was Haruka Caribou, if I'm remembering right.
Oh yeah.
You know, uh but that's what I came across, and then I ended up kind of diving into it. But of course, me, like, I'm not really one for like, these are, go for like, the biggest, go watch, the biggest, most popular of whatnot, especially because at the time, especially really like packed Twitch chats with like multiple thousands of people in it
Hmm.
went by so fast it was overwhelming and anxiety inducing, honestly. So I kind of focused more on like, the more kind of niche indie side of things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it got and I was like, oh, how do they have, the tracking for that? It's probably all like, VR tracking. I don't have anything like that. I
Mm.
don't know what the heck to do. And then I ended up learning, no, you can do this for basically free if you have an iPhone and a computer that can handle running the software and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you can make like a model for basically free using like a 3D VRoid model and assets off of Booth. Um, also, I'm going to save this until I finish the how I got into it. So I made myself a kind of goth femboy model
Uh-huh.
on Vroid, started streaming with that
Right.
on a MacBook Pro that I dual booted Windows off of.
Okay. Talk
And
about
with some like
talk about jury rigging.
some no-name brand, yeah, with some no-name brand capture card uh
From
for like playing like Switch games or whatnot or PS4 games.
yeah.
And I just went from there. Uh I mean, I kind of had for my for like wanted to do like faceless content creation for a while because didn't really like how I looked, was really insecure about that.
Mm-hmm.
Initially I wanted to I'm also really into like motorcycles and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Initially I had wanted to do moto vlogging, but at the time I had only had my motorcycle endorsement and I had a Versus 650
Mm-hmm.
that I hated, that I just Versus 650, it's one of the most soulless bikes you can get, and the weight balance and center of gravity on that is so high and awkward, especially for my short ass,
Mm.
short by motorcycle standards,
Yeah.
because short by motorcycle standards is like 6'2", is like 6 foot,
Yeah.
5'11". If you're
Yeah.
5'11 for motorcycle standards outside of like Harley Davidson or whatnot, you're short as shit,
Yep.
according to the industry.
Yep.
But like, and I was like 5'9" at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I also I hated doing video editing and trying to figure all that out and like audio mastering
Right.
and whatnot. I just wanted something where I just set it up, I just hit a button, and I just did whatever the heck. And that was the content I put out. And so I ended up getting into, VTubing and whatnot.
Yeah. And
Fast forward like a year or two into that, and through VTubing, I ended up discovering, like, figuring out like I was very much like trans. So
mm-hmm.
got into, the social transition of that
Mm-hmm.
and got to like kind of experience that and get an idea of what I wanted from that through like VTubing and my VTuber model and how it was made and everything.
Mm.
Uh, figured, and I met a lot of amazing, queer and trans people through all of that. So
Yeah.
I do not regret getting into VTubing one bit
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
It it honestly saved my life because I genuinely don't know if I'd even be here now if I didn't figure that out about myself and make the decision to try and, figure all that out.
Brilliant. It's just, and you're obviously enjoying what you're doing with it, and
Absolutely.
you're enjoying your online presence with it, and all of the things you're able to do. We have the links in the description. Folks want to take a look at what you got going on. When are you? Do you have a normal schedule that you're on streaming?
Right. So my typical schedule that I try to stick to is stream Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I post on Blue Sky whenever the heck.
Yeah.
Um, you can also catch me whenever on I don't know if this will be launched by the time that this goes live, but Dogbox Racing, the iRacing team I'm on, run by Diesel. She's amazing. Hi babe, love you. She yeah, she is, I mean, she's the Dogbox top dog.
Yep.
She's the founder. She started the whole thing, runs the whole thing, does all the official team paints,
Yeah.
got us, like, she's technically part of Makoni's esports team as
Mm-hmm.
their livery painter, like
Yeah.
as like their paint designer and whatnot. Does a bunch of orders for them. So through that, we have our partnership with Makoni, so we get setups for that and everything.
Wow. That's
Like,
it just kind of opened up a world for you, didn't it?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely, I thought that you know I'd be kind of just a person at big aspirations to do a bunch of cool things, but never really getting there. And now it's like, I got to run in a virtual Le Mans 24-hour, charity race, and because I was there and part of the entry there, I we had a driver get sick halfway through
Mm.
and whatnot, and it would have ruined the schedule and would have been able to finish. But, because I was able to step up and run extra stints, stayed up for like 20 some hour with like 21, 22 hours for that in the end, all
Wow.
through the night, got the car into our, closer driver to run the end of the race,
Yeah.
passed out within like 20, 40 minutes of that. But we got to finish the race inside the like a top 10 position in class
Wow.
because of that.
Neat.
Like it honestly has changed how I view myself as a person because, I've had self-esteem problems my entire life, and I have been in a position in my life where for the longest time where I thought, I'm worthless. I don't have any redeemable skills. I'm not skilled at, qualities. I'm not skilled at anything. I don't make a difference and whatnot. Yeah, doing all this has genuinely changed that. I mean, like even, today in the race today, because of my consistency, my ability to, handle traffic, handle racing, the pace I was running, we're in a position where we're challenging for a win in a race where we qualified like barely inside the top 10.
Wow. That's yeah, that's great to see that, to hear that you found this place, you're enjoying yourself, you get to kind of spread your wings, and you find yourself while you're doing it. That's a pretty amazing story, and a trailblazing one too, for folks out there to keep in their thoughts as they move through their own lives. And we'll have all those links in the description for this interview. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope that the result of today's race is a good one. We don't know the final yet. But the races in the future, I think that certainly you've won a lot of races, metaphorically anyway, just by making it where you are today. And I wish you all the best.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a ton of fun, genuinely.
Thank you for listening to Eric Loy Interviews. Join us again next time when we talk to another member of the always interesting VTuber community.